Chapter 31. You are listening at novelfull.audio. These warriors from Wano country could sense the sword intent radiating from Charlotte. They all looked at Charlotte with respect. It was a swordsman's respect. Well, what brings Captain Charlotte here? That the moment Charlotte entered the camp, Haiten Muchan, having received the report from his subordinates, came out to greet her. Haiten Muchan wasn't really familiar with Charlotte, they'd never been in contact before, but she knew of Charlotte's strength, terrifying. As scary as one of Wano country's Kazuki lords, both were incredibly powerful swordsmen. I'm here to get something from you, of course. Charlotte looked at Haiten Muchan with a smile. This version of Haiten Muchan didn't look old and ugly like she did in the anime. She was a beautiful young woman, still alluring, and with her mimic fruit abilities, she could imitate anyone. Oh. And what might Captain Charlotte want from me? Haiten Muchan approached Charlotte and asked. Charlotte simply pushed her away. Even though Haiten Muchan looked pretty good right now, Charlotte wasn't that desperate. Just thinking about what that old woman would look like in 20 years made Charlotte want to hurl. Charlotte didn't try to hide her disgust. Haiten Muchan didn't get angry. Instead, she sat cross-legged on a mat. Haiten Muchan, you're from Wano country, right? Charlotte also sat cross-legged in front of Haiten Muchan. Haiten Muchan paused while making tea. She narrowed her eyes, looking at Charlotte. What are you implying, Captain Charlotte? What makes you think I'm from Wano country? Haiten Muchan asked, her face a little stiff. Seeing Haiten Muchan's reaction, Charlotte smiled inwardly. The old woman was still trying to play games. Samurai. There are a lot of samurai in your group, and as far as I know, Wano country is the only place that produces samurai. Charlotte explained. She'd come up with this explanation on the way. Whether it was believable or not, she'd bluff first. Haiten Muchan put down her teacup. How do you know about Wano country? I thought barely anyone knew about it out here, and no one would actually know anything about it. Charlotte didn't argue. Before Kaido invaded Wano country, very few people out at sea knew about it. It would be strange if Charlotte knew. How I know isn't important. I'm here for your Wano country's hockey technique, Ryuo. I know you know it, so I need to learn how to use it. Charlotte looked at Haiten Muchan and stated her request. Ryuo. You really do know your way around Wano country. Haiten Muchan was surprised to hear such a familiar term out here. Out at sea, Ryuo was usually just called hockey. But why should I give you Ryuo? Haiten Muchan looked at Charlotte. To just hand it over without getting anything in return was wishful thinking. Charlotte's face darkened, her earlier calm gone. You have two choices, death, or hand over Ryuo. Charlotte said coldly. Rocks and the others were out plundering the island, leaving her and Haiten Muchan to watch the base. If things came to blows, Charlotte was confident she could kill her. Hearing Charlotte's undisguised killing intent, Haiten Muchan paled. She had no fighting power. Damn it. Kuromaru wasn't here, she couldn't handle him. Haiten Muchan's expression turned grim. Aren't you afraid Captain Rocks will blame you for killing me? Haiten Muchan asked carefully. Charlotte burst out laughing. Ha! Haiten Muchan, you're so naive. In the Rocks Pirates, your crewmates don't matter. If I kill you because you're weak, Rocks will just accept it. I'm the captain of the 7th Division. Someone will replace you. Don't think about revenge. That's how it is here. Charlotte looked at Haiten Muchan with disdain. Haiten Muchan gave up. Fine, you want Ryuo hockey. I'll give it to you if you promise to do something for me. Otherwise, you'll never get it. Haiten Muchan said, then closed her eyes, waiting for Charlotte's next move. Charlotte looked at Haiten Muchan with contempt, then she grabbed her by her aging neck. Ryuo, are you going to hand it over? Charlotte threatened. Never, Haiten Muchan said, looking defeated, but Charlotte didn't respond. Instead, she started reading her memories. Thanks to her mind-reading abilities, Charlotte didn't believe anyone could keep a secret from her. Ignoring Haiten Muchan's struggles, Charlotte started browsing through her memories, but because there were so many, Charlotte couldn't find what she was looking for right away. Do you know the Ryuo hockey training method? Charlotte asked. Yes. Of course, I do. When Haiten Muchan responded, Charlotte immediately located her memories of training with Ryuo. Seeing the complete training method for Ryuo hockey, the corners of Charlotte's mouth lifted slightly. After memorizing it, Charlotte released Haiten Muchan's neck. Don't think you can blackmail me, Charlotte. I don't get threatened. Standing up and looking down at Haiten Muchan, who was on the ground, Charlotte said casually, she was such a pervert with those mind-reading powers. Charlotte turned around and left, not even sparing Haiten Muchan a second glance. She looked like one of those deadbeat dads that abandons their wife and kids, use them and then leave. Damn it. Watching Charlotte leave without realizing that she had told Haiten Muchan about Ryuo hockey, Haiten Muchan felt deeply humiliated. The humiliation made her furious. She would definitely get her revenge. And Gong Yifan walked to the tent door and saw Haiten Muchan's younger brother, walking over with two hot girls in his arms. He still smelled of alcohol. Hi. Huh. Isn't that Captain Charlotte? Seeing Charlotte coming out of his sister's tent, Haiten Muan greeted her. Charlotte glanced at him and nodded without paying much attention. Haiten Muan was used to Charlotte's attitude, that's how she treated everyone. Even Captain Rox, she usually didn't talk to the other officers. She just drank or trained alone, but it was surprising to see her here. You two wait for me in my room. I'm going to see my sister. Haiten Muan patted the behinds of the two blonde girls and whispered in their ears. Okay, honey. The two girls responded coyly, lightly punching Haiten Muan's chest. Haiten Muan let the two blonde girls go and headed to his sister's room. Chapter 32. You are listening at novelfull.audio. As soon as he walked into his sister's room, he saw Haiten Muchan on the floor, glaring at the door. Sis. What happened? Why are you lying down? He rushed to help her up, and she snapped out of her drunken haze. Seeing the red marks on her neck, a dark thought crossed his mind. He sometimes liked to leave marks there himself during, well, you know. Could Charlotte have done that to her? The more he considered it, the more likely it seemed. After all, Charlotte was a pervert. What if he had a thing for his sister? Lost in his twisted thoughts, he completely missed the look on her face. Where the hell were you? Your sister almost got killed, and you're nowhere to be found. She yelled, grabbing his ear. Sis. Ow. Let go. I'll be fired. I just got back from the red light district. That only made her angrier. Do you even know what Charlotte did? He found out we're from Wano and threatened me to hand over the secret to Luing hockey. He almost killed me for it. She yanked on his ear for emphasis. What? That jerk threatened you? I'll kill him. Haiten Muan was furious and ready to charge out. Get back here. You think you can take him? She snapped, holding him back. Well, He stammered, suddenly unsure. You'd just be running to your death. She glared at her useless brother. Ugh, you're giving me a headache. Humph. Maybe I can't beat him, but he can't kill me either. Haiten Muan declared, regaining some confidence. That confidence came from his devil fruit power. The barrier fruit gave him an invincible defense. It was a big reason they were able to join the Rox pirates and become executives in the first place. Forget it. We'll get our revenge later. At least he didn't get the Luing hockey technique from me. Haiten Muchan shook her head. It wasn't worth the trouble to fight Charlotte right now. Haiten Muan breathed a sigh of relief. His bravado was just an act. The thought of Charlotte's attacks made him shudder, much less actually fighting him. After getting the Luing hockey training method, Charlotte went back to his training ground. After checking Haiten Muchan's memories, he discovered that the so-called Luing hockey involved letting hockey flow like liquid, which surprised Charlotte. After all, armament hockey was usually hardened. You covered your body or weapon to enhance its power or defense. Of course, the most important thing was being able to hit Logia-type devil fruit users. Otherwise, you couldn't beat them at all. Time to start practicing with flow. After seeing the armed color hockey training method, Charlotte decided on his training sequence. Later that day, Charlotte was still training near his residence. Boss. Boss. A hurried voice called out. Charlotte stopped his punch and looked toward the sound. The area around him was littered with smashed gravel and splintered wood from his training. Seeing it was one of his crew, Charlotte asked, "What's wrong? What's the rush?" "Boss. We're out of supplies. And we're broke." The crewman said, out of breath. Charlotte frowned. He was focused on training every day and hadn't been out plundering. He hadn't realized they were running out of money. If he wanted to get money, robbery was the fastest way. "Get the ship ready. We're going to sea. I'll go talk to Rox," Charlotte ordered. He put on some clothes and headed toward the center of the island. His ship had just been finished. He was very happy with it. It was 120 meters long and 20 meters wide, big enough to hold over 800 people. It was a true ship of the sea, and even more rare, it was a wooden sailing ship. An ironclad ship from his previous life could have held thousands of people. But even with this large ship, there were almost 70 sailors just to run it. Charlotte even required his fighters to know how to work the sails. He arrived at the hall, which reeked of alcohol and various foods. Well, if it isn't our little Charlotte. What brings you here today?" Charlotte knew who was talking without even looking. "John, if you don't want your head, I'll be happy to remove it for you." Charlotte shot John a cold look. "Jia ha 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 ha. That's right. John, if you don't want it, I'll take it." "Jia ha 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 ha." Golden Lion Shiki chimed in. "Goo ha 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 ha." Whitebeard joined in the laughter. John, on the other hand, glared at Shiki with a dark look. He didn't mind Charlotte's comment. They'd been together for almost half a year, and the guy always looked like he was about to murder someone. But it was different coming from Shiki. Rox didn't care about the squabbling among his subordinates. "Charlotte, what do you want?" Rox asked from his throne. Everyone immediately shut up and looked at Charlotte. "My crew is out of money. I need to go to sea and grab some," Charlotte said casually, as if robbery were as simple as eating or drinking. "Wah ha 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 ha. No problem, of course, no problem. We're pirates. Isn't plundering normal? I'll give you a mission. Plunder this kingdom and bring me the king's head. I'll let you keep 30% of the treasure." Rox threw a map onto the table, marking a kingdom, the kingdom of Coronte. It was located near their seas. He must have done something to piss off Rox. Charlotte felt a little bad for them. Charlotte picked up the map and nodded. "Understood." Then he left the hall. Rox watched him go, thinking about how Charlotte was a cadre who didn't care about treasure, parties, or anything but getting stronger. Rox wasn't worried that he'd get out of control. Even though he had no desires, Rox still appreciated this kind of genius. He was exactly the kind of person he'd been looking for. If you wanted to do great things, you needed capable men. Chapter 33 The Kingdom of Coronte. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Boss. Charlotte, a long sword strapped to her waist, walked onto the docks, where one of her underlings with a gun immediately approached. "Everything set, boss." Charlotte nodded and handed him a chart. "You're in charge of raiding this location," Charlotte said casually. The underling took the chart and studied it. "Yes, ma'am." He hurried aboard the ship. "All right, lads. We're heading to the kingdom of Coronte." Charlotte stood at the bow, gazing at the distant sea. Other ships were taken aback by the 100-meter ship, and then they saw the flag, the Rox pirates, captain of the 8th Division. Are they going out to plunder? Countless pirates wondered to themselves, because what else would pirates do at sea? They just wondered who was going to have a bad day. Bloop, 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 star. Hello. Navy headquarters. The captain of the 8th Division of the Rox pirates is setting sail. Their goal is robbery. Please prepare. An agent disguised as a pirate, hiding in the port, reported. Navy headquarters. Roger that. The voice on the other end of the den mushy hung up and rushed to Chief of Staff Kong's office. Reporting to the admiral. The Rock's pirates are on the move again, that the messenger announced. What? Who's leading the charge this time? What's the target? Kong asked immediately. Admiral, it's Captain Rockefeller Charlotte of the 8th Division. The target is unknown, but it looks like they're planning a sea robbery. Upon hearing the messenger's words, bang, star. Those damned pirates. Hearing the word robbery infuriated Kong. He dismissed the orderly with a wave, looking at the den mushy in his hand. He wanted to call the vice admiral in the New World to arrest Charlotte, but he knew no vice admiral in the New World could match her. The Navy headquarters was desperately understaffed. All the strong ones were busy suppressing trouble around the world. And he was stuck at headquarters, unable to take direct action. Damn those pirates. Kong could only set down the den mushy in frustration. Without the manpower, he had no choice but to abandon the idea of dealing with Charlotte. Why do so many powerful people join the pirates, while the Navy's short on personnel? No. I need to talk to the 5 elders about expanding the army. He was left with no choice but to ask the world government to increase the Navy's strength, but that would involve a long and difficult negotiation. Boss. We're almost there. An underling cautiously approached Charlotte at the bow to report. Charlotte opened her eyes, spotting a faint black dot in the distance, growing larger before her eyes. Prepare for bombardment. Charlotte ordered casually. Yes, ma'am. Charlotte stood on the deck, watching the bustling crew. Her ship was armed with 40 cannons. In reality, these cannons were only useful against civilians and regular soldiers. Against truly powerful individuals, they were useless, not even as effective as Charlotte's sword. The citizens at the port noticed a ship approaching. Some lookouts observed. No. Trouble. Pirates. Spotting the flag on the ship, he screamed in horror. What? Pirates. Hearing the lookout's words, everyone nearby panicked, staring at the pirate ship on the sea. Bang. Bang. Bang, star. Charlotte's pirate ship opened fire. The cannons at the bow targeted the coastline of the port, just 100 meters away. 4 people died instantly. Help. Pirates. The citizens scattered in terror. Where are the pirates? Where are the pirates? The shelling of the port and the citizens' cries quickly alerted the city guards. A general with a mustache marched out with over 1,000 soldiers. Charlotte, standing at the bow of the ship, immediately sensed him using her observation hockey. Interesting. Charlotte said softly, looking at the general. So there is someone strong here. Charlotte was mildly intrigued, but that was expected. It was a kingdom, after all, and a kingdom with over 10,000 people was bound to have some stronger people. The general also saw the pirate ship shelling the coast. His face went pale when he recognized the flag. I knew it. I knew it. Doing this would bring disaster to the kingdom, the general muttered. His eyes were filled with despair. Charlotte gave the order to dock the ship. Seeing the young leader of the pirates, the general's face turned ashen. Blood. Blood, soared Charlotte. Among the 1,000 soldiers, many recognized Charlotte and had seen her bounty poster. Blood, soared Lord Rockefeller Charlotte, with a bounty of 800 million. As the general spoke, he looked at Charlotte with cold sweat. The great sword in his hand was shaking. He. The pirates behind Charlotte jumped off the ship one by one as it approached the shore, greedily eyeing the grand city and the luxurious palace at the top of the mountain. Thud. The pirate descended the stairs. Charlotte walked down the stairs step by step. Charlotte stood on the docks, looking around. What a thriving island. Charlotte looked around and sighed, reminding her of her hometown, Kame Island. But then she turned her gaze to the 1,000+ soldiers standing before her. Surrender, and you'll live, Charlotte said without looking at them. Charlotte's voice wasn't loud, but the pirates around her echoed her words. Surrender, and you'll live. Surrender, and you'll live. Nearly 100 pirates waved their swords and guns, shouting. Even though there were only 100 of them, they made the 1,000+ soldiers tremble. The mustached general, standing at the front, looked at the soldiers around him. there was no morale to be found, this wouldn't do. The general secretly panicked, finally gritting his teeth and taking a step forward. "You pirate SCU," the general was cut off mid-sentence, a flash of white sword energy. His voice froze, because he felt a sharp pain and then lost consciousness. "General," the surrounding soldiers were stunned and cried out for their general, then they all looked at Charlotte as if she were a monster. The kid had just waved his hand, and their general had been split in two. "Quiet down," Charlotte sheathed her sword, asterisk clang, star. Asterisk bang, star. Asterisk bang, star. Countless weapons fell to the ground. The soldiers dropped their weapons one by one and stepped aside. They didn't dare to resist any longer. Didn't they see that their general had been instantly killed by the kid on the other side with a single sword strike? Not only did they drop their weapons, but they also started shouting, "Long live the Rocks Pirates! Long live the Rocks Pirates!" Charlotte glanced at them disdainfully. Those shouting were all the fancily dressed officers, and they were the loudest. Charlotte looked at them with disdain and then walked toward the city gate with her pirates. Chapter 34: The Destruction of the Gorent Kingdom. You are listening at novelfull.audio. This is a disaster. The city guard surrendered. General Solo's dead. The kingdom of Coronte is finished. Charlotte strutted into the city with almost 100 pirates, and the once peaceful town erupted into chaos. Citizens scattered like cockroaches. The usual lowlifes and thugs saw their chance to stir up trouble. They robbed, killed, and committed assaults, unleashing the darkness they'd kept hidden. Charlotte, however, cut down anyone she saw doing this. Her actions startled her crew, the pirates. Their eyes filled with greed, quickly hid their intentions. Led by an officer, Charlotte and her crew soon arrived at the palace. The first thing that greeted Charlotte was a cannonball. She raised her sword, the shell exploded mid-air, then, another swipe, and a section of the palace wall went down. "Go get it," Charlotte said softly. The pirates around her perked up at her words. "Let's go, boys," one yelled, leading the charge towards the now open palace gates. Charlotte knew she couldn't completely suppress her crew's pirate instincts. That'd be dumb. Nearly 100 pirates stormed the palace. Charlotte, however, wasn't in a hurry. She turned to the trembling officer beside her. "Take me to your king," she demanded, her eyes cold. "Why yes, ma'am," the officer stammered, leading the way. The sounds of screaming and laughter echoed around them. Charlotte ignored it all, heading straight for the throne room. "Damn them! Damn them all! Traitors! You've betrayed your king," a disheveled middle-aged man with a determined look on his face roared in the empty hall. He was the king, and he'd sealed his fate by rejecting Locke's demands and insulting him over the phone. Charlotte had to admit, the guy had a death wish. She entered the hall and looked at the distraught king. "Rebels! Thieving scum! You'll all die!" he screamed, drawing his sword and bringing it down towards his own neck. Thunk, the sword fell, and the king collapsed to his knees, silent. Charlotte was surprised by his stubbornness and didn't know what to say, but Locke wanted his head, so she had to take it back. "Go on, cut off his head," she ordered the officer. The officer stared at Charlotte, shocked. "You got a problem with that?" Charlotte asked, frowning slightly. "Why yes, ma'am." The officer, looking at the king he'd served, closed his eyes and picked up the fallen sword. With one swift motion, he beheaded the king. Charlotte was satisfied. She didn't care much, but she didn't want to do something so disgusting herself. Beheading was barbaric. "Take the head, and let's go." Charlotte turned and walked out, surveying the chaos outside. She was starting to get a headache. It was her first time leading the destruction of a country, and she felt out of her element. She called over 2 pirates. "Bag this up. You're taking it back with you," she ordered. The pirates, seeing it was Charlotte, nodded frantically and snatched the head from the officer's hands. Charlotte watched them leave, then started gathering the rest of her crew. Luckily, the palace wasn't huge, or it would have been a real pain to round everyone up. Over an hour later, she watched as they lugged out bags overflowing with gold coins, jewelry, and Bailey. Charlotte frowned. It wasn't enough. Then she saw the military officer in his fancy uniform, and her eyes lit up. You know where the nobles live? She asked. The officer, still reeling from beheading his own king, stared at Charlotte, horrified. You're a monster. He cried, swinging the king's sword at her. Charlotte smirked, catching the blade between her fingers. Armed hockey covered her hand. Please, she scoffed, shattering the sword. She grabbed the officer by the neck. In an instant, she knew the location of the noble district and why the officer had resisted her request. He was a noble himself. No wonder he'd balked at the idea of robbing them. Let's go. We're hitting the nobles next. Charlotte announced, waving her hand. Yeah. Long live the boss. The pirates roared, waving their weapons. Charlotte's lips twitched. They headed out of the palace. They raided all night, returning to the ship at dawn with the kingdom's treasure. Heh. Those nobles are richer than the king. Charlotte mused, looking at the treasure piled on the deck. The kingdom's treasury had only yielded about 50 million Bailey. But in the noble district, they'd found billions. Charlotte had initially only wanted to squeeze a little more out of the situation, but when they found 300 million Bailey in just one earl's house, it was on. They'd robbed every noble house they could find. Even with some people escaping during the night, they'd managed to snatch a staggering 50 billion Bailey's worth of treasure. Murder and arson really were the fastest way to get rich. Boss, we're set for life. The pirates exclaimed, looking at the mountain of treasure. Damn it, half of this is going to Locke's. The rest is ours, Charlotte growled, her teeth grinding at the thought of giving up half of the loot. That was 25 billion Bailey. The pirates fell silent, sensing Charlotte's anger. Everyone gets 500 million. Don't even think about taking more. Charlotte announced. She wasn't one to treat her crew poorly. She wasn't like John, hoarding everything for himself and ultimately dying at the hands of his own men. Charlotte wasn't afraid of that happening, but there was no need for such a situation. The remaining 25 billion was enough to last her a year, at least. It would be enough unless she had some pressing need for cash. Long live the boss. The pirates cheered. Even though it was only 500 million, it was more than enough for them. They'd spend it on booze and the red light district. Let's go home. Back to Hachino's island. Charlotte ordered. Yes, Captain. The crew responded. The ship sailed away from the coast, leaving behind a smoldering island. The kingdom of Coronte was no more. Chapter 35. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Back to Hachino's, Charlotte presented Locke with King Glenn's head. She didn't even know the guy's name. Locke took the head, barely glancing at it as if it were trash. Ha ha ha. Charlotte, you've done good. What do you want for it? Locke asked his trusted lieutenant. Charlotte paused, then thought about what she truly desired. Considering the fate of that king, she knew strength was everything. I want everything you can teach me about hockey and swordsmanship. Charlotte looked directly at Locke. She wasn't about to let this opportunity pass. Locke chuckled. Ha ha ha. No problem. I'll see to it. Just go back and wait. Locke nodded, grinning. Seeing Locke agree, Charlotte turned and left the room, trusting Locke's promise. Back on his own ship, Charlotte sat on a sofa in his cabin. He glanced up at the ceiling, where a pull ring held his devil fruits. He only had two, the ice fruit he'd found previously, and the bomb fruit from the anime, the Booger Man's fruit. He couldn't believe he'd actually gotten his hands on it. After seeing the devil fruit encyclopedia, Charlotte had been intrigued by this fruit. Based on his knowledge of bombs from his previous life, he figured it could be devastating if developed properly. But he had his doubts. Ultimately, he decided against eating any devil fruit. The vulnerability to seawater and sea stone was too absolute. Charlotte didn't want any weaknesses. He decided he would save it for someone later or just keep it as a collectible. Time flew. News of the Coronte kingdom's destruction spread, and Bloodsword Charlotte got a bounty of 1 billion berries. The Rocks Pirates Division captain of the 8th Division, for his role in attacking the naval fleet and destroying kingdoms, dead or alive. Charlotte pinned his bounty poster next to his bed. A year passed. Almost every month, Charlotte followed Locke, leaving a trail of blood and chaos across the seas. The Rocks pirates' reputation grew with each raid, but Charlotte wasn't happy with the Rocks pirates' power. Over the past year, he'd gotten a clear picture of the infighting within the crew, especially the ambitions of certain commanders. Two main factions were emerging, and they were incredibly powerful, dominating the Rocks pirates beneath Locke himself. One faction was the Golden Lion's fleet. After a year of expansion, it numbered nearly 2,000 pirates. This massive fleet, combined with Shiki the Golden Lion's float fruit, carved a path of destruction through the new world. Even the Navy could only watch Shiki float above their heads. The Golden Lion barely acknowledged Locke's orders, though he didn't blatantly refuse them. The other faction consisted of the pirates led by John, Silver Axe, and Wang Ji. Together, their combined strength rivaled the Golden Lion's. However, Shiki was still the dominant force, leaving John and his crew to scavenge for scraps. Even so, their fleet boasted nearly 1,500 pirates. Charlotte suspected Locke was secretly supporting them, or else how could John maintain such a large fleet? Aside from these two factions, the other commanders mostly ignored the rivalry. Whitebeard Edward Newgate spent his days drinking, only listening to Locke. Of course, with his immense power, even Locke was wary of him, so he was left to his own devices. As for Charlotte Linlin, she was either pregnant or in confinement most of the time. She was practically popping out babies. Charlotte was shocked, especially when she propositioned him to have a child with her. He was furious. Who did she think he was? Just because he was a bit of a horn dog didn't mean he'd sleep with just anyone. He wasn't interested in being a public stud. He rejected her outright, leading to a massive brawl. Back then, Charlotte Linlin wasn't as terrifying as she'd be later. Her hockey and devil fruit abilities weren't top tier yet, only her sheer physical strength gave Charlotte some trouble, but Charlotte wasn't a pushover. They fought for 2 days and 2 nights, clashing swords and hockey, nearly destroying Beehive Island. That's right, Beehive Island. After Locke gathered a large number of pirates, he renamed Hachino's Beehive Island, making Charlotte realize this was the island Blackbeard would later claim. Charlotte and Charlotte Linlin's fight ended when Charlotte Linlin had an uncontrollable hunger fit. Still, Charlotte knew he would have eventually lost. This realization ratcheted up the pressure. It was now Haiyuan year 1481, with less than 3 years before the Rocks pirates fell. He had to get stronger in those 3 years. From then on, Charlotte sailed the seas with his crew almost every day. They fought pirates and the Navy. Of course, Charlotte wasn't stupid. He picked his battles. He steered clear of any well-known pirates from later generations. The only pirate crew that was well known at the time was the Roger Pirates. Everyone else had yet to make a name for themselves. Charlotte had been lucky so far, not running into anyone too strong. The Navy was a different story. Soon after setting sail, he ran into a strongman from later generations, the infamous Black Arm Zeph. The moment Zeph saw Charlotte, he recognized him. He dogged Charlotte relentlessly, ranting about justice and wanting to capture Charlotte, throw him and impel down, and lock him away for life. Charlotte was dumbfounded. Was Zeph always such a tryhard? They clashed several times. Charlotte quickly realized he was outmatched. Zeph's armament hockey was insane. His hockey-infused fists were so strong they could block Charlotte's slashes. News King Morgans even captured the fight on film, and with that, Zeph earned the title of Black Arm Zeph. Chapter 36 Combat. You are listening at novelfull.audio. It never dawned on Charlotte that the name Black Arm Zeph came from his name, Charlotte. The Navy seized this opportunity for some major hype. After being pushed around by the Rocks pirates in the New World for over a year, this was a rare win for them. Vice Admiral Zeph the Black Arm pursues Charlotte, captain of the Rocks 8th Division, the Blood Sword hero. The headlines blared. Charlotte was livid when he saw the newspaper. He became the laughingstock of all the Rocks' top officers. Of course, some of the younger crew members were laughing, too, but Charlotte, with his overwhelming and arrogant presence, blasted those who dared to laugh to smithereens with his sword energy. This reignited his notoriety as the Blood Sword hero, but this time, he was infamous. Soon after that pursuit, the Navy recalled Zeph back to headquarters. Along with him were people Charlotte knew, Carp, Sengoku, and Zeph. Their retreat boosted Charlotte's confidence, and he set sail the very next day to start more fights. This time, Charlotte was a straight-up monster. No pirate could withstand a single blow from him, he was wiping out pirates faster than the navy could, and, of course, they still went ashore from time to loot. Charlotte wasn't just killing anyone, though. These were all evil pirates that Rock's intelligence agent, Qi, had flagged. They were all pirates and slave traders. Every one of them had blood on their hands. Naturally, Charlotte's actions soon met with retaliation. Zifa, the black arm of Navy headquarters, came back for another round. There was no other option. Charlotte's crazed attacks on slave ships were causing a slave shortage in the holy land of Mary Geos. The celestial dragons were throwing tantrums left and right, so the world government put the pressure on the Navy. In the end, the Navy sent Zifa, their first showdown in over a year. It was about to go down again. This time, Charlotte didn't run. Running wasn't really a priority in Charlotte's mind. Anyway, if you can't win, you get out, no biggie. But this time, Charlotte needed Zifa as his sharpening stone. Year of intense training at sea, combined with the hockey and swordsmanship training given to him by Rox, had completely transformed him, not to mention Rock's endless support. He even got advanced techniques from the Navy's 6 powers, like the life return, handed over to him. This further enhanced Charlotte's physical skills, especially life return, which seemed tailor-made for him. He was already proficient in the 6 powers, but practicing life return took him to a whole new level. He quickly mastered life return and the 6 king pistols, and this fight with Zifa would be the ultimate test of his training over the past year. On the shore of a deserted island, 2 figures faced off. Zifa. Long time no see, here you are. Looking at Zifa, clad in his Navy justice coat, Charlotte smiled lightly. His eyes blazed with the thrill of battle. Pirate Charlotte, I'm arresting you in the name of justice. Zifa tossed his justice coat behind him, and a high level of armament hockey immediately pulsed through his body. Charlotte chuckled at Zifa's words. He drew his long sword and pointed it at Zifa. Then let's get this party started. Charlotte's hockey soared to the sky. A flying slash, hundreds of meters long, served as his opening greeting. He imbued it with armament hockey, still not fully accustomed to controlling it. Death to the pirate Charlotte. Black arm viper. Zifa's fists turned pitch black, his armament hockey hardening to the extreme. He punched Charlotte's flying slash head-on. Bang. The 2 attacks collided. The entire island shook. Dust and sand swirled everywhere. Huge scoop. Huge scoop. Morgans watched the intense battle from the air. The news of the Vice Admiral's battle with the captain of the Rock's Pirates' 8th Division will definitely shock the world. As Morgan spoke, countless newspaper gulls flew out behind him, spreading across the sea with news that was sure to set off alarm bells for every power. Charlotte had specifically called Morgans since the last embarrassing incident. He was determined to redeem himself. He had contacted Morgans on purpose. Beehive Island. Bang! Rock slammed his fist on the desk in front of him. Assemble everyone. Head to the Edwall Sea area. With Rock's order, every pirate began to move, including the other 7 commanders. Jia ha 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 ha. This kid really knows how to make a splash. The Golden Lion, Shiki, chuckled beside Rock's. Gwahaha. That kid's got guts. Whitebeard, Edward Newgate, stood next to Rox and said after taking a swig of sake, with the Golden Lion Shiki's powers activated, countless pirate ships floated into the air and set course for the Edwall Sea area, guided by Qi, Navy headquarters. Woo! The alarm blared for an emergency mobilization. Every Navy soldier boarded their respective warships. The leader was none other than Admiral Steel Bones Kong, with Carp and Sengoku behind him. Target the New World Edwall Sea area to rescue Zifa. Following Admiral Steel Bones Kong's command, every Navy warship set sail for the New World aboard special world government ships. The battle between the 2 had spiraled out of control. Charlotte just wanted to fight Zifa one more time, and have Morgans witness it, nothing more, and Zifa simply spotted Charlotte and wanted to bring him in. Neither of them expected this to escalate into a war between the pirates and the Navy. Ha 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 ha. Zifa, why are your punches getting weaker? Charlotte, covered in blood, looked at Zifa. Even though Charlotte seemed more seriously injured than Zifa, he still laughed. He smashed his fists against Zifa's. Zifa, with blood streaming from the corner of his mouth, barely managed to block. Charlotte's sword had already shattered. After all, it wasn't a legendary blade, just a slightly better than average one. Zifa felt a surge of triumph when he broke Charlotte's sword. Can a swordsman even be considered a swordsman without a sword? Even though Charlotte's strength was close to that of a great swordsman, without a blade, what could he do? But what Zifa never saw coming was this: after losing his sword, Charlotte's strength didn't diminish, it increased. Charlotte knew it all along. He practiced swordsmanship solely because it looked cool and was convenient. Imagine, you swing your sword, and a slash hundreds of meters long appears in front of your enemy. How much shock would that instill in their heart? But it doesn't work against truly powerful opponents. You have to understand, Charlotte was on the path of pure physical prowess from the beginning. As a mercenary in his previous life, he had been exposed to nearly every kind of physical skill, even if he didn't realize it at the time. After traveling to this world, those physical and killing techniques became Charlotte's most cherished assets. Seeing Charlotte's relentless barrage of fists, Zifa knew he had to fight back with everything he had. Chapter 37: The Restlessness of the Situation. You are listening at novelfull.audio. With insane arrogance and freakish wrist strength, no matter how Charlotte attacked, she couldn't hit anything vital. It was a total stalemate, a complete standstill. Yo! Zifa! How you holdin' up? My fist ain't feelin' too good, is it? Charlotte took a breather and taunted Zifa. Zifa just glared back, his face like thunder. Charlotte, you pirate! We underestimated you. Thought you were just another swordsman. Hell, maybe you'll be a top swordsman after this. Nobody pegged you as a hand-to-hand combat master. Zifa's voice was low and dangerous. His fist kept pounding Charlotte's armament hockey defense. Didn't expect you to master internal destruction and advanced armament hockey. How the hell did you train in a single year? Zifa was stunned by Charlotte's every attack. Last year, he'd chased this punk all over the place. Now, in just 12 months, they were evenly matched. Ha 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 ha. Gotta learn and grow, Zifa. Since you kicked my ass, I've been training like a maniac. Blew up, like, for mountains. Charlotte's eyes were wild. His conqueror's hockey surged, even more intense. Red and black lightning crackled, messing with Zifa's observation hockey. That was why Zifa was on the defensive. Such intense conqueror's hockey. Why the hell would someone like you join the Rocks Pirates? Zifa landed punch after punch, his tone filled with frustration. Why join? Because your navy is too damn weak. I let Rocks find me. I was gonna hit the sea anyway. Guess I'm starting 3 years early now at 17. Charlotte remembered joining Rocks. It was still embarrassing. Zephyr was silent, partly ashamed that Charlotte had become a pirate, partly because Charlotte was only 17 and this powerful. It was terrifying to imagine what he'd become, maybe stronger than his own captain, Rocks. Then the sea would have another overlord, another loose cannon. As captain of the Rocks Pirates' 8th Division, Charlotte's file was no longer secret at Navy HQ. Most of the top brass knew about him. Talk's useless. I'm throwing you an impel down and locking you away, Zifa roared, slamming a fist into Charlotte's body. Ha 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 ha. Try me. Charlotte, equally defiant, met the blow with his own hockey-infused fist. Fists collided. The ground cracked, trees were uprooted, and the waves turned violent. The navy and pirate ships along the coast rocked wildly. The shelling stopped on both sides. Lieutenant General Zifa. Boss. Fighting paused as everyone watched the battle ashore. The sky is cracking. Someone noticed the shift in the clouds and shouted, shocked. Pirates and navy looked up. The whole island shook from Zifa and Charlotte's battle. Incredible. This is huge. Massive scoop. Morgan snapped photos like mad. If he could, he'd live-stream this to the whole world. The earth split, the sky cracked, and the sea raged, all because of this fight, and the battle raged on. Head in that direction, you morons. As soon as the Rocks Pirates entered the Edwall Sea, Rocks sensed the chaos and it came from where he was pointing. Following Rocks' order, the pirate ships changed course. Quick! We can't let the Rocks pirates get there first. We have to capture Charlotte before Rocks arrives. Cyborg Kong also arrived in the Edwall Sea. Admiral Kong. They're that way. Warring states sense the battle ahead. Okay. Go there now. Cyborg Kong pointed. A dozen massive naval warships moved. This was no longer just between Navy HQ and the Rocks pirates, it wasn't just Charlotte and Zifa anymore. Shambles Islands. Island No. 17. A tavern. Captain Roger. Bad news. Really bad news. Navy headquarters Zifa, the Black Arm, is fighting the Rocks pirates, blood sword hero, Charlotte near the Edwall Sea. Navy HQ sent 100 warships towards the New World. And the Rocks pirates have gathered 16 big pirate ships, they'll likely meet in the Edwall Sea. It could be a huge war. An agent reported with intelligence from a special source. Roger, this is the real deal. The Roger Pirates vice captain, Hades Rayleigh, said, holding a newspaper. Roger snatched it and frowned. Damn, the Roger Pirates looked at the matching reports, then at each other. Guys! Our voyage is over. We need to get involved. Roger said seriously. Hades Rayleigh and the others looked at Roger. Back to the New World. Join the fight. Roger announced. Yeah, the Roger Pirates roared. Oh, what am I gonna do with you? Rayleigh sighed, covering his head. Ha 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 ha. Don't be like that, Rayleigh. Let's stop this chaos. Roger threw an arm around Rayleigh's shoulder and grinned. Why are you the captain? Rayleigh agreed, resigned. Ha ha ha. Coding. Target the New World, Edwall Sea. Roger laughed. Everyone started moving. They coded their ships, snuck into Fishman Island, and sailed for the New World, Holy Land. Mary Geos. Bang. No, absolutely not. Get Cyborg Sora on the line now. This isn't the time to fight the Rocks pirates head-on. Tell him to turn back immediately. One of the 5 elders, Satan, yelled. Chapter 38 The confrontation between the two sides. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Too late. Cyborg Kong's already shipped out. We just found out. If we call him back now, what kind of face does that leave the world government? The 5 elders holding the sword stared at Satan and said. Get Sora on the line ASAP. Tell him to avoid any conflict with the Rocks pirates. Now's not the time for an all-out war with pirates. Satan looked at the 5 elders holding the sword. The other 3 elders all glanced at the one holding the knife. They were all on the same page as Satan. The 5 elders with the knife seemed to register the silent agreement and pulled out his den mushy, bro. Bro, star. The den mushy rang for a few moments before being answered. Sora, asked the elder holding the knife. It's me. Lord Elder, Cyborg Kong, aboard his warship, spoke into the den mushy. Seeing who was calling, Cyborg Kong felt a wave of foreboding. The elder's next words confirmed his fears. Do not engage the Rocks pirates. Bring Zifa back, the 5 elders holding the knife stated plainly. What? Why? Cyborg Kong asked, incredulous. No reason. That's an order, said the elder. Yes, sir. But what about the Navy's reputation? Cyborg Kong tried to argue. Remember, the Navy is just the world government's muscle. You don't get a say, click, star. The elder hung up. Cyborg Kong stared at the den mushy in his hand, his forehead throbbing, steam practically rose from his head. He was furious. He clenched the den mushy, wanting to throw it, but he held back. Sengoku and Garp, who stood behind Cyborg Kong, couldn't keep their calm as well. Admiral Kong. Don't listen to the world government. This is our chance. Our chance to wipe out the Rocks pirates. Garp and Sengoku spoke at the same time. They'd assembled the entire force of Marine headquarters just to crush the Rocks pirates in one blow. How could they retreat without firing a shot? Shut it. Follow orders, Cyborg Kong snapped, then, without another word, he stared out at the sea. They were already close to the battlefield. Report. Large fleet of the Rocks pirates sighted, a marine shouted from the crow's nest. What? Already, Cyborg Kong snatched up his binoculars and looked in the direction the lookout was pointing. The sight that met his eyes was astounding. 16 massive pirate ships emerged, one after the other. On board stood the most infamous pirates, each with a bounty over 100 million. Edward Newgate, Whitebeard. Golden Lion Shiki. Charlotte Lin Lin. Wang Ji, Silver Axe John. All 6 executives are here. The Marines were shocked to see the notorious pirates of the New World lining the bows of their ships. All 16 pirate ships left a gap, as if clearing the stage. Rock's ship emerged from behind. It's him. Rock's D. Jibek. Every Marine stared at Rock's, who had been causing such a stir in the New World for years, the pirate with a bounty of 23 billion. The biggest bounty ever recorded. Wahahaha. Cyborg Kong. Long time no see. The 2 fleets were only 100 meters apart, but neither side attacked. Rocks. What are you doing here? Cyborg Kong yelled from the warship's bow. Rocks glanced at a small island in the distance, which was erupting violently. Why am I here? To pick up my crew, of course. You gonna try and stop me, Admiral Kong? Wahahaha. Rocks threw his head back and howled with laughter. Captain Rocks. Captain Rocks. The pirates, fueled by Rock's arrogance, roared. Cyborg Kong glared, then, he turned his head. Head to the island and rescue Vice Admiral Zifa. Zifa was their ace. He couldn't be left to die. Yes, sir. Hearing the order, the Marines steered their warships towards the island. Rocks watched them go. Wahahaha. Bring our crew back, boys. Rocks bellowed. Bring back Captain Charlotte. Get Captain Charlotte back. The pirates steered their ships toward the island. Rocks didn't want a full-scale war with the Navy. It was too soon. He'd start the war once he got his hands on that weapon. Both fleets approached the island. The island was already in ruins, as if it might crumble at any moment. Jia ha ha ha. Not bad, Charlotte. You actually pushed Zifa this far. Though he hadn't fought Zifa directly, Golden Lion Shiki had tangled with Sengoku and Garp enough. Shiki also held Zifa, one of the Navy's rising stars, in high regard. He never thought that Charlotte could fight Zifa for so long. Gururara. I never thought Charlotte was hiding anything. Whitebeard, Edward Newgate, watched Charlotte's blindingly fast attacks and exclaimed. I thought he was all about swordsmanship, but he's a beast in hand-to-hand combat too. Looks like we all underestimated him. John casually noted as he watched Charlotte fight. His words made everyone frown. Was he throwing shade at Charlotte? Rocks remained silent, but studied Charlotte with interest. The Marines, too, saw Charlotte holding his own against Zifa. Looks like we all underestimated Charlotte, captain of the 8th Division of the Rocks Pirates. After a moment of silence, Sengoku said, deeply impressed. Damn it. Why are so many geniuses coming from the pirates? Cyborg Kong punched the railing in frustration. Zifa and Charlotte had been fighting for 3 days straight, 3 days and nights of relentless fighting, without rest. Even the ships parked on the shore had been blown away by the shockwaves of their battle. Now, the two faced each other, exhausted. Big news. Big news. Morgans, hidden in the clouds, spotted the Marine headquarters fleet and the Rocks Pirates fleet. Excited, he started snapping pictures, but after a while, he realized something was wrong. Why aren't they fighting? They've just stopped. No intention to attack. Morgans was confused. He saw them looking at each other. If nothing happened, there'd be no big news. The News King wouldn't allow it. Bastards. I'll expose your hypocrisy. Morgans had already decided how he'd slam the Navy in tomorrow's paper. He'd make them look like fools. Bang, star. Zifa and Charlotte traded blows again. At this point, their stamina was running on fumes. Chapter 39 Panic in the World. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Ha 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 ha. Zifa, you bought the farm. Their fists had connected, and Charlotte smirked. Hee hee. You too, Charlotte. Zifa chuckled as well. Then, both collapsed. They remained locked in their final punching positions. Lieutenant General Zifa. Many Navy soldiers on the warship shouted in alarm. Quick! Save Lieutenant General Zifa. Leading a naval warship, many sailors dove into the sea. The Rock's pirates jumped off their ship, rushing toward Charlotte. The top fighters on both sides watched, letting their subordinates handle the rescue. Countless Navy soldiers and pirates splashed through the water and onto the beach. Lieutenant General Zifa. Captain Charlotte. Their respective crews reached their fallen leaders. They hoisted them up and carried them back to their ships. Doctors rushed forward to examine them. Well, Cyborg Kong watched the doctor approaching the deck and asked. Weak. Really weak. He needs rest and plenty of food. The injuries aren't serious, just exhaustion, the doctor reported after his examination. Phew, Cyborg Kong sighed in relief. Just drained. Get Lieutenant General Zifa to the lounge. Steelbones Kong ordered. Several rear admirals immediately carried Zifa to his quarters. Cyborg Sora glanced in the direction of the Rock's pirates. They were checking on Charlotte too. Captain Rocks. Captain Charlotte's okay. Just wiped out. If Charlotte were conscious, she would have recognized the ship's doctor. It was Miss Bakken, Edward Weevil's mother and future warlord of the sea. Currently, she was the Rock's pirate's ship doctor and scientist. Get her to her cabin to rest. Rocks waved dismissively, then gave the Navy a pointed look. Tension immediately filled the air. Wahahahaha. Steel Bones Kong, how about a drink sometime? Rocks grinned at Cyborg Kong. Humph. Fall back. Steel Bones Kong glared, then spun around, his cloak flaring as he ordered the retreat. Rocks laughed at the Navy's retreat. Wahahahaha. You lot, back to Beehive Island. At Rock's command, both fleets turned away from each other. The next day, news rocked the seas. Navy Vice Admiral Zifa fights Charlotte, 8th officer of the Rock's pirates, ending in a double knockout. Navy Headquarters Admiral Steel Bones Kong led the Navy against Rock's D. Jibek, captain of the Rock's pirates, in the Edwall Sea, but neither side engaged in battle. Is this Navy weakness, or are the Rock's pirates too strong for the Navy to risk an attack? As the story spread through Morgan's network across the seas and the Grand Line, everyone was talking. The situation in the New World shifted dramatically, and the Navy's apparent weakness made countless people around the world uneasy. If the world was uneasy, the New World was in a state of panic. Countless countries and powerful figures were terrified. Both the underworld and the royalty of countries affiliated with the world government felt the fear. The Rock's pirates were not to be trifled with. They plundered and murdered wherever they went. This was evident in the countless New World island kings assassinated, countries ruined, and people enslaved in recent years. Roger, we missed it. Rayleigh approached, holding a newspaper. They had just seen the news after passing through Fishman Island. Roger frowned, his face dark as he watched the Rock's pirates wreaking havoc in the New World. Rock's D. Jibek. Roger muttered. Navy Headquarters. Bang! Steel Bones Kong slammed the newly bought table in fury upon reading the news. The table shattered. Damn Morgans, is he trying to throw the world into chaos? Cyborg Sora roared. Admiral Kong, the world's panicking. According to reports from our branches, people are turning pirate everywhere, heading for the Grand Line. All branches are requesting reinforcements. Warring states handed Kong the latest reports. Sora angrily ripped the reports to shreds after reading them. Blue blue blue. Yeah, steel frame empty connection. A call from the 5 elders came from the Den Mushi. The world government approves the Navy's expansion plan and authorizes increasing the army. Wu Laoxing's voice was very calm, but the news was music to Steel Bones Kong's ears. Yes. Thank you, elders, I promise to make the Navy stronger than ever. After Cyborg Kong finished speaking, the other party hung up the phone. Looking at the steel-bone Kong who was still angry just now, he became extremely happy in the next second, and Sengoku was a little confused. General Kong. What's wrong? Warring States asked. Cyborg Kong punched the table with a hammer. The world government has approved our naval expansion plan, Cyborg Sora said excitedly. Warring States was also instantly overjoyed after hearing this. Great! The situation at sea is critical, with pirates setting sail every day, overwhelming our branches. This will finally alleviate the pressure. Zhangguo clapped his hands happily and said. Ha ha ha. Exactly. With enough manpower, we'll wipe out all the pirates sooner or later. Cyborg Sora declared with a determined expression. Warring States, draft a recruitment announcement immediately and send it across the world, letting everyone know the Navy's expanding and warning those with ulterior motives. Steel-bone Kong immediately ordered Warring States to get up. Yes, Zhangguo walked out happily. He is very good at such little things. Beehive Island. Charlotte lay on a huge bed, staring at the ceiling. Bandages swathed her entire body, leaving only her mouth and eyes exposed. She had woken up in her own bed. 5 maids were sitting by her side, one of them was breastfeeding a 2-year-old child. Master, you're awake. Suddenly, Alice noticed Charlotte open her eyes and exclaimed in surprise. Her voice immediately drew the attention of the other girls. Master, all 5 maids surrounded her, including Jenny with the baby in her arms. What time is it? Charlotte murmured, barely moving her lips. Master, you've been out for 2 days, this is the 3rd day since your fight with Zifa, Martha said, holding a towel. Chapter 40 Esdes. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Turns out it's been 3 days since the fight with Zifa. Who won? Who won? Charlotte tried to sit up, but felt sore all over and too weak to move. Master, easy, easy. Martha said quickly, trying to help him relax. She gently pushed him back down. From his position, Charlotte could see Martha's slightly bulging belly, a reminder that she was also pregnant. The baby she carried would be his 3rd child. He wondered if it would be a boy or a girl. Charlotte already had 2 kids, a daughter and a son. His 2-year-old daughter was Jenny's child. He named her Rockefeller Estes. She inherited her mother's blue hair and the power of a devil fruit she'd accidentally eaten. It was a total accident. Charlotte had left one of his devil fruits out, forgetting it on the bedside table. His curious daughter found it. Not knowing what it was, she took a bite. As everyone knows, even a small bite of a devil fruit grants you its power. After Estes ate the fruit, her hair turned blue. She reminded Charlotte of an anime character from his past life, so he gave his daughter a similar name. It was a way to remember his old life, he supposed. Now, at 2 years old, she spent her days crawling around the ship, constantly getting into trouble because she couldn't control her devil fruit abilities. At such a young age, the crew had already nicknamed her Witch, which left Charlotte speechless. Still, he had a lot of love for Estes. After all, she was his firstborn. His 2nd child, Jillian, was only 2 months old and still needed a name. Part of the reason was that Charlotte had been distracted. Zifa had kicked him around pretty good in their last fight, and it pushed him to get back to crazy training, so he wasn't paying as much attention as he should have. Plus, they were always at sea, and Jillian and the others stayed on Beehive Island. He hadn't had time to visit and kept forgetting. The little one was still sleeping in her crib. Bring Estes here, Charlotte said to Jenny. Jenny hesitated. Charlotte knew what she was worried about. Estes might hurt him. Even Jenny got caught by Estes's accidental blasts of cold. Thankfully, Jenny had trained with Charlotte, otherwise she might not have survived the cold blasts. It was a wake-up call for Charlotte. He would never let his children eat devil fruits at such a young age again. It was dangerous for everyone involved. It's okay. Bring her, Charlotte insisted. Seeing his determination, Jenny had no choice but to fetch little Estes. Goo goo. GGA. The blue-haired Estes, pacifier in mouth, plopped down next to Charlotte. Charlotte reached out and touched her chubby little face. His hand instantly felt cold. That was the downside of the ice fruit. Estes didn't seem to notice, but to anyone else, the child felt like an ice cube. Gah, thought Estes felt something on her face and swatted at it, knocking Charlotte's hand away, feeling the surprising strength in her tiny hand. Charlotte smiled, good to have strength. It's how you protect yourself. Estes. Jenny scolded, seeing her daughter smack Charlotte's hand. It's all right, Charlotte reassured her, signaling her not to worry. He knew his own body. He was fine, he was just a little weak and needed to eat something. Tell the chef to bring out all the meat. Charlotte called to a maid in the hallway. A maid in uniform appeared in the doorway instantly. Soon, a dozen maids, all wearing matching outfits, entered the room carrying piles of barbecue and meals, placing them on the table. Help me up, Charlotte requested. Alice and Nell quickly rushed to his side, helping him to sit up. They knew what their young master needed, food to recover. They helped Charlotte to the table. The maid standing by cut the grilled meat into small pieces and fed them to Charlotte. He barely chewed twice before swallowing. Keep it coming, Charlotte ordered. Yes, master. That the maids took turns feeding him, emptying their plates into Charlotte's mouth. Only the 5 maids who had served Charlotte from the beginning used the title young master. The women Charlotte had acquired later in life, without family or home, had stayed to serve him, and they used the title master as a sign of respect. Charlotte had saved them all. Charlotte's stomach seemed bottomless. He devoured all the food the chef had prepared in a short time, but he still wasn't satisfied. Tell the kitchen to make 1, no, 3 more batches. Charlotte told the maid beside him. Yes. The maid bowed and hurried toward the kitchen. Charlotte felt a little strength returning to his arm. He raised his hand and started tearing off the bandages around his torso. Ah! Master, the 5 maids gasped in shock, trying to stop him, but it was too late. Why aren't I wearing any clothes underneath? The bandages fell away, revealing him completely naked. Charlotte looked at the 5 maids, his face flushed, a wave of embarrassment washed over him. Being naked in front of so many people, even a tough guy like Charlotte felt awkward. Master, cover yourself. Martha quickly grabbed a cloak and draped it over Charlotte. Everyone out. Martha ordered the other maids. Martha was quick on her feet, but many of the maids had already seen Charlotte in the nude. Their faces were beet red. Most of the maids were teenagers, with only a few in their 20s or 30s. They were all young. Older women had a hard time in the slave market. After the dozen or so maids had left the room, Charlotte put on the cloak. Martha helped him get dressed. Feeling his strength returning, Charlotte started shoveling food into his mouth by the handfuls. He was way faster than the maids had been. Soon, the first table was cleared, but it still wasn't enough. Luckily, the maids quickly returned with stacks of fresh plates. The chefs were working like crazy in the kitchen.